Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hybrid Forms Collaborations Reading and Discussion. I'm thrilled to be co-hosting this event with my collaborative writing partner, Jeff Friedman. I believe this is the first event of its kind. Thank you so much for being here with us. And just a quick aside, I'm actually very lucky to have been collaborating on book projects with both Jeff Friedman and Aimee Parkison, who's here tonight with Carol Guess. And I have to say that collaborations are really my new passion. They're just really giving me something right now. I'm enjoying it so much. I'm going to introduce Jeff Friedman. Jeff is the author of 8 collections of poetry, prose, and fables. Jeff and I have recently completed a co-authored hybrid prose collection that will be published by Pelicanesis in 2022. And its working title now keeps changing all the time, is The Fallen Jews of Motown. Take it away, Jeff.
Well, first of all, Meg, thanks a lot for inviting me. I really appreciate it to co-host again the second time. And, and I've really been enjoying, of course, working with you. It's been great during the pandemic to sort of get this going. And I'm really kind of honored to be working with Aimee Parkison and Carol Guest and Christopher Citro and Dustin Nightingale. I've read all your work, so I'm really happy we're doing this reading together, and just the idea of the collaborations and hearing what other people, I'm the novice in this whole thing, so I'm eager to hear what other people say. Well, before we start, I just want to mention during the reading, please mute so that, for concentration. And then after the reading, we're going to be taking questions. So please feel free to ask any questions. We welcome them, in fact. Okay, we're going to start tonight with Aimee Parkison and Carol Guess. In 2019, Aimee Parkison and Carol Guest collaborated on a short story collection, Girls Zoo, published by Fiction Collective 2. Girls Zoo is an experimental text that examines how women in society are confined by the expectations of pop culture, politics, fashion, and romance. In each story, a woman or girl is literally confined or held captive, and we can only watch as they are transformed into objects of terror and desire. Parkison and Guest co-wrote most of the stories, passing them back and forth, breaking through the confines of singular notions of authorship and the male gaze. Please welcome Aimee and Carol.
Carol, which one of us should start? Do you want me to start? Or would you like to?
Do it. You make the choice. I'm good either way.
Okay, so I'll read one of the pieces from Girls Zoo, and then Carol we'll both read briefly, and then we're going to discuss a bit of our process in writing Girls Zoo. So I'm going to read one of the more romantic stories. This one is called Girls in Bars, and it's a story in 3-part. It's a flash fiction. Girls in Bars, Part 1. Girl in Daiquiri. She's Flor de Cana, simple syrup, and freshly squeezed limes. I'm American moonshine and rum chata. One of our girlfriends is Skittles infused with vodka. The other is Goldschlager and Rumpelmans, fire and ice. Her mother is Bunny Guinness, coffee liquor, and Carolyn's Irish cream. My sister is a gladiator bomb, amaretto and SoCo dropped into Sprite and OJ. Meanwhile, her sister is a thunder bomb, Stoli vanilla vodka and blue Caraco dropped into orange Fanta. She kisses me like strawberries and cream, Bacardi, Malibu, amaretto, strawberries, and coconut milk. She spins me into a tropical smash, amaretto, Captain Morgan, Malibu, fresh pineapple, fresh squeezed OJ, house sweet and sour, and lime juice. She breathes her breath into me, then licks my lips like a pina colada, Malibu rum, dark rum, amaretto, simple syrup, fresh pineapple, and coconut milk. Hey, America, she whispers. Now I'm house-made cinnamon apple moonshine. Part 2. Girl in garage style mimosa. Smell the wild thyme from the lake shore as girls in bars whisper to each other, aware we are listening. We were once their mothers, but are strangers now. Their laughter becomes like blossoms flown on the wind, later blown through air vents as girls become like pollinators in the greenhouse, where they kiss each other, becoming women they think are so different from the ones who were once their mothers. Do they even remember us as they drink garage-style mimosas, vodka, champagne, and freshly squeezed orange juice? They drink and drink, never realizing we are confined with sweet-smelling flowers, hothouse women sweating near the gardener, who mist our bodies in clingy gowns, while observers wearing scissor spectacles regard us as if we are merely flowers blooming into cottage garden paintings. Part 3. Girl in Summer Toddy. Jack Daniels, honey, rose water, and freshly squeezed lemon. Party planners asked us to fill bathtubs with this concoction and called it the whiskey dance. My lover and I bathed in it night after summer night. Soon we began filling the kiddie pool with the new old-fashioned rye whiskey, house bitters, orange bitters, and simple syrup. Once my lover's hair was slicked back in simple syrup, rose water misted my eyes, and we kissed. A halo of bees followed us down the stairs where honey stuck to the rails. Bees floated past our eyes, hovering, and we whispered. Orange bitters dripped from our breasts, although my lover assured me my breasts were coated in lemon. We did the whiskey dance on those summer nights of our captivity. Between my legs, I felt her heart fluttering. I came, shuddering, drunk on what I thought was love, always wondering, what if I was wrong to believe her heart was throbbing as we retreated? She kissed me, cradling my face in her hands. I never wanted summer to end. As she released me, I felt her fingers slowly drifting away from my eyes with bees combing the apple orchards. Carol, would you read now?
Wow. Aimee, I'm always stunned whenever I hear you read. I just think about how lucky I was to work with you. And I feel that whenever you read as well. That was gorgeous. Even though, of course, I know these stories so well, they feel new when you read them. Yeah, so I'm going to also read from Girl Zoo. And I'm going to read a story called Girl in Doghouse. And this was one of those stories Aimee sent me. We wrote back and forth, which we'll talk about. But Aimee sent me the beginning of this story, and I just thought, I cannot take this anywhere. What am I going to do with this story? And then it became a story about a young girl who is in, who lives in a house with guns. And it's not going well. It's not going to end well. Girl in Doghouse. Dad lives in Green Meadow Terrace Estates. When he moved out of the yellow house, he promised I could have a cat. And when I live with him, I do. I have 100 cats in the walls of his apartment. It smells like cheese and orange juice. Mom lives in the yellow house, hoarding dogs. Strange kennels appear everywhere, and I don't know where they're coming from. The walls have massive holes full of puppies. We crawl around the house with a flashlight, gazing into puppy holes. We have to throw dog food inside the holes in the walls. When he first moved to Terrace, Dad was all about the ladies, old school hookups, one shot at a time. First Nancy, then Mona, then Ray, then Tamika. Now it's Sadie, and she sees the cats too. We're in this together, she says. I don't know if she means Dad or the cats. Sadie is my pick, and Dad says that's good because she's his pick too. At school, families are all different, and the teachers aren't allowed to say one kind of family is better than another, but they do anyway. We aren't allowed to have guns, but sometimes we shoot. Mom has a gun and Dad has a gun. Sadie has a toothbrush that vibrates. There's a battery inside. But will the battery get wet? I ask, thinking of guns in the walls of the house. Dad has a gun safe. The combination is 1, 2, 3, 4. Mom has a box under her bed and it locks with a key taped to the top. I know how to shoot because Sadie taught me. She said, hold onto your toothbrush and don't let go. Pointing it at her head, she said, shoot to kill. She said, head or heart? She said, if you miss, you'll shoot something else. Out in the woods behind the yellow house, down by the river near Dad's apartment, between boxcars by the port where I ride my bike, straddling the train tracks where kids go to smoke. These are my practice places, my kickbacks. I take Mom's gun when I go to Dad's, and I take Dad's gun when I go to Mom's. They don't notice anything. They have other guns, other kids from other lives. They have books on tape and barbecue sauce. Mom's boyfriend, Luke, makes soundtracks for commercials, like that commercial for auto insurance where the whole family dies except the sister, left behind in the rest stop, still combing her hair. I have a gun and I have bullets, and I'm teaching myself to aim for the heart. Out in the woods behind the yellow house, I shoot leaves from trees. Down by the river near Dad's apartment, I shoot cans on a log. Between boxcars by the port where I ride my bike, I don't shoot anything. Straddling the train tracks where kids go to smoke, I name all the names and the mean girls go down. One by one, blood on the tracks. My make-believe movie. In real life, they just laugh at me. We don't have metal detectors at school. We have signs that say, no drugs, no guns. We have signs that say, dirty hands spread disease. We spend hours on dead names and hours on kickball. We kick and we kick, but our teachers can't text, can't navigate the internet. They want to be our friends on Facebook. They want us to teach them what it means to live now. After school, I walk to Mom's. The walls of the yellow house howl around me. When I close my eyes, I'm surrounded by puppies. I feel their warm fur, smell the meat on their breath. Sometimes Sadie and I watch shows while Dad's working late or whatever he calls it. Dad doesn't deserve her, but maybe I do. We binge watch the bloodiest shows on TV. Sometimes Dad stays out all night. Sadie and I sleep head to toe on the sofa. We name all the cats, working backwards from Z. We sleep soundly in Kevlar, guns safe in our holes.
Carol, that was amazing. Thank you. Oh, this is bringing back so many memories to hear that story. That was so fun to write. One of the things that surprised me so much about collaboration, Girls, it was the first I had ever done in terms of collaborative works. And it happened because Carol asked me to collaborate with her. And I'd never done that before. It was so much fun. And there were so many surprises. And it also works so fast because you have two writers creating this thing. And it seems like everything is multiplied by more than ×2 with the two writers working on it. Carol, I know you've written like 20 or more and published 20 or more books in fiction and poetry, many of them collaborative. So you've done this for many, many years. How did it get started in terms of the collaboration? And do you have any advice for anyone that might be thinking about perhaps doing a collaborative book in the future?
Well, everyone should be lucky enough to work with you, and that's probably not going to be possible, but so much of it is about finding the right collaborator. And something I think about a lot now when I choose, although now I'm actually working on a lot of solo stuff, but I always choose someone that is going to stretch me, someone who's going to push me in a direction I don't know how to go, someone whose work I already admire, you know, that kind of thing. And it's so much fun because then at the end of the collaboration, you have this whole new skill set. There's so much you learn from someone. So the first collaboration I did was with Daniela Olszewska, who's an amazing poet, originally from Poland. And she has this understanding of American idioms from having learned them. And she just plays with language and has this different sound to her work. But we stumbled on a sort of a structure for our book. We wrote poems about the website WikiHow, which is always how to do something. If you look up how to, you know, how to boil water, there's a WikiHow article on it. And we took our titles from the WikiHow entries. And then we got really lucky. The book got picked up really quickly by Black Lawrence Press. And then the WikiHow people found out about it and they invited us to Palo Alto. And we did a reading in the WikiHow headquarters, which was super weird because it was like a lot of 18-year-olds who were getting paid a lot of money to to do this thing, and they didn't seem to care too much that we were there, but we did. So it was really fun, and that got me excited about the doors that might open with collaboration. Yeah, so Aimee and Meg, I want to throw this back at you because I know you two recently have been collaborating, and I wonder what that's been like.
It's been, as you say, working with someone that you hugely, admire their work, and I've admired Aimee's work for years. It's absolutely thrilling. And, and it just, as you say, it stretches you. It stretched me a lot working with Aimee, and it was just magical and fun. And of course, we started during the beginning of the pandemic, and it really got me out of this feeling of stuckness. I mean, because it was like flying. It felt like flying working with Aimee. It was brilliant. We were working a lot with music prompts. So I think that also really helped elevate the feeling. It really made me feel a lot of things. And it was just a beautiful experience, really.
Yeah, I can't say enough about getting to work with Carol and Meg. I mean, I love their work, and I learned so much from both of them. It does feel like this awesome learning experience to collaborate with someone who's already an accomplished artist. Your technique and their technique, they will create these different things that you wouldn't have created on your own, and you learn from the process. You learn by doing. You just jump into it. And I feel like I'm a different and better writer from having worked with both Meg and Carol on different projects. I mean, I learned so much on accident just by doing. It's like you're going to learn if you collaborate with someone who's an accomplished artist, because the process is already there.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, writing can be so isolating, and it was just the opposite, So thanks for asking, Carol.
I don't want to rush, but I know we're like on a 20-minute time slot, and I see it just now got to be 4:20. So I want to say that for the timekeepers. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So Jeff, you want to go ahead and
Yeah, are you?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Move on to that. Yeah. I guess it's been 20. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, all right.
Wonderful. That was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, that was terrific.
So
Terrific reading.
Yeah.
And
brilliant.
You say it because you're the host, and I'm the co. I'm only the co.
The co.
Okay. So I guess, well, anyway, that was terrific. And I wanted to hear both of you read something as I've read your work before. I'm going to just introduce Meg Pokrass and Jeff Friedman. These are not introducing us at this point, but okay. Meg and My Collection was born in February 2021. We have written over 100 pieces since then. Our stories have been published or are forthcoming in American Journal of Poetry, Plume, New World Writing, Ethelzine, Panegyrus, and Vox Populi. Our fabulous microfiction collection, which, as Meg pointed out, was once in many titles, once titled The Fallen Jews of Motown, will be published by Peloponnesus Press in early 2022. In each tiny story and prose poem, lovers become confused by each other in surreal and humorous ways. The book is filled with experiments in how playful and fun it is to collaborate with another writer who shares a similar love of magic and the comic possibilities of fabulous microfiction. And also we border into prose poem, hybrid, and sometimes flash as well. Our collaboration started with really us emailing each other before a reading we did together, and then we just continued emailing every single day. We kept emailing, and that led to first one Zoom session and then regular Tuesday night Zoom sessions, which were, a couple hours long and also really hilarious as we kept trading jokes and sending.
We talked a lot about comedy and our comic influence and how much we loved comedy and how much
we traded pieces
comedy in our lives because of the pandemic and needed to laugh. Yeah.
So, and we started doing prompts together. I mean, it was accidental actually how the collaboration came about. We started doing prompts together, and then Meg, was it like didn't we do some responses, or you do some
Yeah,
responses?
I had just read your book, Floating Tales, which I absolutely loved. They're like little fables. They're all like little fables and tales. And I just wanted to, I felt like I really wanted to give sort of, use one of yours as a prompt and give it a try myself. I think I started with yours called Bear Fight from Floating Tales. And I worked with Bear Fight and created my own version of it. I kind of did you in a way, kind of mirrored it and sent it to you. Thought, oh God, you know, what is he going to think? And then you loved it, and then you sort of wrote a response to that and sent it back to me. So we just started playing. I mean, I see it as play. I see it as you were very playful with each other.
Right, absolutely. Actually, I saw it as like you did sort of an imitation of my piece. I did an imitation of you imitating me. You did another imitation of me imitating you imitating me. And then we were kind of off to the races because those sort of went by, some of them went by the wayside, and then we started actually writing together from scratch. You know what I mean?
I think I just pitched you at some point. I'm like, we're kind of writing a book. Should we just do it? And I was really sad because my partnership had ended. And I was like, oh, I felt like I was lacking this joy, you know, and all of a sudden it was back. It was just amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't planned. We fell into it. We were working on it before we even knew it. And we had a number of methods of working on it. You know, one, we had read Denise Duhamel and Maurice Eaton. And so we tried very loose variations of Exquisite Corpse.
Yeah,
and
done a lot of those.
Yeah. And actually we did, I mean, I would be teaching and you would start to send me something and I'd send you something back, and this went back and forth the whole day. And then
we're writing like 5 pieces a day at one point. It was insane.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I was astounded. I turned around at the end of the day while I was teaching, and I
didn't even know I was writing. Yeah,
I didn't even know I was doing it. But so what finally came of it is most or all the pieces were done by both of us, and it's sort of reconciling the two voices. Somehow they blended. I mean, they're there, but you can kind of feel that they've.
I think it is unusual in that we're a male and female collaborative team, and you know, a lot of the time I was sort of saying, yeah, the woman would feel more like this, or, you know, or at least I would, and then so that was a really, you know, we're still kind of new at this, so we're still kind of figuring it out. But so absolutely. So listen, should we start reading? I think that would be a good idea. Give them examples, and you want to jump in. But it's been a real pleasure working with Meg, and really a lot of fun actually. So even though she's sort of, in a way you could say she has like other partners, she's out there. It's like out there with everybody. It's sort of anyway, so I'm going to start. We've done one thing is we've done a few surreal sequences together. One is a circus sequence, and another and this was Meg's idea, was a sequence involving a new wife, a husband, and an ex, and a house made of cheese. So I'm going to start with that piece, and it's called Mistaking One Cheese for Another. She said her house was Grana Padano, but it was really Pecorino. I'm not a snob or anything about cheeses, but who goes around boasting about her house being made of cheese and then gets it wrong? It's hard to know what to say to her. So I sniff around her house at night when she's sleeping and pinch the corners. It crumbles into my palm. Pecorino, I say to myself, and take a plastic container home for my husband to sample. Yes, he says, only my ex would mistake Pecorino Romano for Grana Padano. But then again, her pasta was always mushy, and not even a good Pecorino can help that. He tastes the cheese again and licks his lips. Now he's eating the cheese and saying it's got a wonderful flavor. And I can only imagine that the flavor reminds him of her, salty and buttery, like some kind of sheep mulling through the grasses, its body full of curls. Take it, Meg. Okay, this is a story about a character who definitely does not have the touch. It's called Out of Touch. He touched the window and the window dissolved. A hummingbird hovered, staring into his eyes, and then flew away. A bee bounced off his cheek and a fly circled his head. He caught it, but when he opened his hand, the fly was gone. He picked up a glass of water from the counter and the glass vanished, the water spilling out. He touched the water and the counter was no longer wet. When his lover came into the kitchen, he was staring at a hole where the faucet used to be. What did you do to the faucet? She asked. I touched it, he said. Everything I touch disappears. To demonstrate, he touched a mug she had given him for his birthday, featuring their smiling faces. It vanished. His lover looked at him, unimpressed. You're the opposite of a superhero, she said. I didn't know there was such a thing, he said. He touched her hair and a bunch of it fell out in his hand. Give that back, she said. He handed it back to her and she stuck it in her pocket. Will you make me disappear? She said. She was married and they had been seeing each other secretly for years. Are you kidding? He said. When they lay down on the bed together, he told her he would never let her disappear. He let his hand pass over her body without touching it. That feels good, she said, her eyes closing. Do it again. This time, his fingertips almost grazed her breasts and she shivered as if touched by a feather. Again, she said, as if speaking to him in a dream or trance. Too close for comfort, he thought, and lifted his hand, still moving it over her body. Outside the window, there were no bird sounds at all. There were the sounds of a quiet storm starting up, branches beating against the hole where the window used to be.
So, what was striking me was that this piece, and when we were working on it together, this is a good example. Like, we didn't really edit each other. We just started writing, and like Meg might write a few pieces or might write the one voice, and then all of a sudden I'd respond. Right. And then you would just take it and go from there. And then I would just take it. So what was?
Yeah. And we allowed each other to change the piece entirely. I mean, just to suit our purposes. And then we'd send it back. And I think because we trust each other's instincts, it was like, if I changed it, you were cool with that. If you changed it, I was cool with that. And then we just roll from the new version.
I like the ones where I also like the ones where the male female voice go battle back and forth, like in that last one where there's a sort of like, they're saying strange things to each other, but so we also did I mentioned a circus sequence, a sort of surreal circus sequence. We have some unusual circus characters. And this one is titled The Weak Man in the Circus. I live on a diet of air particles and gnats, enough to keep me awake, but not enough to give me the strength to walk outside or even to lift a glass of water to my lips. For if I could do that, I would lose my living. Each day, the boisterous crowd clamors inside my tent, eager to see me attempt my famous feats. I start with hoisting a book, but my skinny arms can't hold it up for even a second, so it falls on the ground. Then I rise slowly with Selena, my lover and assistant, at my side, holding me as I take a step or two. Next, I might flex my arm to show off my very small hump of a bicep and my bony elbows. Eventually, I lift a piece of paper. As it rises almost to my chest, I give out and the paper floats toward the crowd. They cheer wildly and throw bills and coins in my direction. I place my fingers around the corner and act as if I'm going to pocket it, but it's no use. It's too heavy and it drops, which causes them to pitch even more money at me, knowing I don't have the strength to spend it. When I pretend to faint, dropping into my cot, my lover signals for the crowd to empty out. When they leave, she collects the money and counts it before locking it away in a trunk. You outdid yourself, honey, she says, even if I didn't. When we make love, it's from a distance. She blows kisses at me with her hand. I catch them with my lips and close my eyes.
The next story I'll read is called Owl Eyes. Her father rescued the owl, nearly dead, tail feathers mutilated. He lived permanently in her backyard in a homemade cage, so tame he was nearly a sibling, so timid about the world, he wouldn't go away even when let out. He perched on the fence and stared at her in a way that no boy had ever done. She knew her father watched over her as if she were also wounded, too vulnerable to leave the house or the yard, even though she was restless and always looking out a window or over the fence at other houses. He confined her, so she talked to the owl. It's our secret, she said, knowing her father would not allow it. If he actually heard what she said and saw the love in the owl's eyes. And sometimes the owl glanced at her as if to take hold of her body, as if he saw the fragile bones hidden inside her rough wings, as if he could breathe the delicate air in which she lived.
You're a really good reader. I mean, you read your stuff really well. I love the way you read. So,
Thank you.
the next one is called What You Can't Fix. She was always fixing me, stuffing filler in my holes, applying putty or crazy glue to seal off any cracks to be sure nothing got in. She would pace in front of me as if I were a sculpture, looking at me and thinking, and then she would release herself, satisfied for the moment that the holes were gone and that I was becoming something beautiful and solid. Still, there were holes in my mind she couldn't fix. Holes where the light got in and sometimes snow and rain. Holes where my thoughts escaped when they had to. But when she put on her blue satin kimono and hovered near me, I could forgive her. When we made love, it was like hearing the rain beat on the roof, knowing it will not get in.
This next story is called Fatherless Daughters, and it's a story about fathers who keep floating away. In springtime, abandoned daughters burst like myopic butterflies with binoculars attached to their faces while they try to identify their absent fathers who zip through the clouds like geese, but they're not geese and they have no sense of direction. "Can you see me down here, Dad?" one of the abandoned daughters trills, while one father zigzags ever closer to the sun. "It's hurting my eyes," he yells, waving his pale wings like flags. Another abandoned daughter spots a cloud in the shape of her father and flies through him again and again. "He wasn't much of a father," she says. "He's better as a cloud." Another daughter shouts, "Heads up," as her father falls from the sky, headlong into the crowd of abandoned daughters. The other fathers cringe and avoid looking down. "They're out to get us," they say. "They want money or hugs or something." The daughters, tired of treading air, fling themselves toward their fathers, eager to bring one home, even if he's someone else's father, even if he never earns another dime, even if he sheds all his feathers. But the fathers prove elusive, no longer really fathers. Thank you.
Okay, good. The next one I'm going to read is back to that first sequence where the new wife, the husband, the ex, and in this case, wolf hybrids. So this piece is called Wolf Hybrids. And it's a little bit longer than some of the other pieces we've been reading. My husband's ex-wife moved to our small town and brought 5 wolf hybrids with her. She would glide through town with her wolf hybrids pulling in front of her as though she were on a sled, guiding them over the snow. When people saw her coming, they got out of the way or crossed the street to walk on the other side. Tall and beautiful, she smiled at everyone as she passed, but the wolf hybrids, unlike dogs, stared out with deep brown eyes that were unwilling to make a connection or engage others. They often snarled at those who tried to offer a treat or get near them. I was not afraid of them. I admired the fluidity of their movements, their thick coats and long legs. They didn't seek approval. To my surprise, when I get near them, they held my gaze for a long moment, as if they recognized me as a kindred spirit. Perhaps it was only my imagination. I looked directly at them, but not at my husband's ex-wife, who never spoke a word to me. My husband's ex kept her house spare with only a strange-looking avocado couch, a few chairs, an ostrich lamp, and walls covered with photos of her wolf hybrids. When walking by, I peek in her living room. My husband never spoke of her. Once I asked him, why did she move here? Maybe to get to know you a little better, he answered. Gloom filled our home for the rest of the day while he sulked and mumbled to himself. But the next morning, he was cheery again, preparing a spinach omelet with toast and jam and home fries. I never asked him again. They say wolf hybrids can hear sounds at great distances and can predict the future. One night I went to her house and saw that the wolf hybrids were not chained. They prowled the large fenced yard as if looking for prey. They began howling, but as I approached, they became silent. Why are you here? I asked. Why is she here? They moved together, facing me, as if forming a battle line. They didn't answer unless silence was their answer. I felt as if I were standing on the edge of a cliff with nowhere else to go and them in pursuit. Until the largest of the wolf hybrids broke rank and pressed her snout against the fence, sniffing me until she knew all she needed to know. Take over, Aimee. I mean, take over, Meg. I'm sorry. I was looking at Aimee's name. Take over, Aimee. You want to?
Okay, I'll be reading the last of our pieces. It's called Pet Loss, and this story evolved from one of Jeff's stories in his book Floating Tales. The story is called Night with Bonita, and I sort of started it out by making my version of it, and this is one of those where we just kept switching back and forth. Pet Loss. Since Hubert the bearded dragon died, the thing that cheered me up was having sex with my diner customers. The first one was Taylor, middle-aged, married, and polyamorous. He hugged like a boa constrictor. Pet loss is so hard, he'd say, squeezing me like a pinky mouse, making me feel like I was alive again. After one of our lovemaking sessions, he ended up in the hospital with heart failure. I visited him there, thinking that Hubert would have liked the unnatural warmth of the hospital room. His wife, Alexis, was by his bedside. I usually see you in your diner outfit, she said. She gave me a lift home in her Honda. He'll be fine, she said, thinking that I was worried about her husband. I invited her into my apartment. That's Hubert's terrarium, I said, pointing to a cluttered corner of the room. I still had his UV light plugged in. She stared at the pet loss support group flyers and hugged me as hard as her husband had. Losing a pet is like losing a dream, she said, moving in to kiss me. After Taylor and Alexis, there was Charlene, who owned the Critter Center and wanted to harvest my eggs. I could imagine my babies hatching in an incubator, but not in another woman's belly. You and I would make beautiful creatures, she said at the end of my shift, kissing me with the most beautiful scaly lips. Then it was Fernando, a retired bullfighter with scars all over his body. I asked him if he'd like to meet me after work to accompany me to the Critter Center and help me choose one of the baby iguanas. That one looks a little bit like you, he said, pointing to a wise-looking, buggy-eyed lizard. Afterward, making love with me on my alligator-patterned rug, he promised me his couch in Spain whenever I wanted to travel. I've never been to Spain, I said. Can I bring the iguana? He said, why not? And left me with a case of herpes and the promise of a climate so warm that a reptile wouldn't need a UV bulb to stay alive. Then there was Elia, who sat at the counter and waited for me to arrive every day. I take you home, he would say, and make you happy. In the corner of his apartment, he had an aquarium with only one fish. Where are the other fish? I asked. I had a piranha, he said. He ate all the others. I stared at the fish, who looked lonely and useless, like a castaway who had lost the will to float. Ilya removed my jacket and kissed me sweetly on the lips. I can be your prince, he said, his big Russian eyes full of soulfulness. Be my frog instead, I said. He squatted down on all fours and croaked. So that's
great, Meg. So I mean, I think, you know, with all the fabulism in the pieces, it's kind of interesting how our personal lives, or how things from our personal lives snuck into all the pieces in weird kind of ways.
Yeah,
too.
I really did have a bearded dragon lizard, and he died, and I still haven't quite recovered. So that was really helpful to process. We're at the 20-minute limit, 20 minutes and some seconds actually. So I'll give the extra seconds to Dustin and Christopher, you know, like, so you get next. So up next is Christopher Citro and Dustin Nightingale. Christopher Citro and Dustin Nightingale have been writing collaboratively on and off since 2013. Their collaborative poems have appeared in numerous venues, including Denver Quarterly, the Chattahoochee Review, Verse Daily, Zone 3, Diagram, Hotel America, Southern Indiana Review, and They Said, a multi-genre anthology of contemporary collaborative writing that's by Black Lawrence Press. Their unpublished manuscript of collaborative prose poems, I Am the Owner of a Small Punctured Tire, has been a finalist at Slope Editions and Conduit Magazine's Minds on Fire Open Book Prize, and it has received encouragement at contests or open readings at Black Lawrence Press, Brooklyn Arts Press, The Cupboard, Octopus Books, Pank Books, Sundress Publications, and Tinderbox.
So please welcome Christopher and Dustin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for that introduction, Jeff. Thanks, Meg, for inviting me and Dustin to take part in this event with everybody. It's a delight to share the reading and discussion with you and Jeff and Aimee and Carol. And thanks for everybody who's here out in Zoom land. It's so wonderful to see faces and names and friends. Dustin and I would like to read you some of our poems. We wrote each of these collaborative prose poems extremely collaboratively. A few words back and forth all the way. So they're very collaboratively written. We're going to read them. We're going to read them one at a time. We're going to take turns and alternate. And then after we're done reading our poems, we'll share a short statement about our collaborative process. So Dustin, can you please go first?
Yeah, you got it. Anywhere is the center of the universe. If you want me to, I mean, really want me to, I will watch the meteor shower with you on the roof while we drink wine. Will I help make up names for the ones that fall between sips? Yeah, probably. As long as they don't all start sounding like your ex-boyfriends or worse, like me, like you love it when I say, that one is called My Silly Heart for You, or this wine is almost empty. What are we going to do now? We could spend unending lifetimes and never see that flash of light again. It makes me terribly sad and blessed to think about. I'm not sure about you, but I understand they don't even know I'm down here, and that makes me feel pulled by invisible strings towards the dark. I mean, how wonderful if nobody ever found us until we were ready to be found. That one is called Vice Versa. And that one, I'll just shut up and watch. 10,000 lights waiting until one precise moment to drop. You turn to me with wine lips and smile. And then you say something much more interesting than anything I've said.
And this is called Brush Aside the Noise with Locks of Matted Hair. On this planet of people who nip at me, I managed to find you, and now you're gone. I don't remember what day it is, but the rain keeps draining in from the sea and spits on the cliffs. I'm tired as the rain that falls in the sea. There is a field of dachshunds running towards the dirty sock of the sun setting. Blood cells falling over themselves to make it to the ends of my veins where it thins out and tries to swim back. They try so hard it's pretty, and sometimes they make it. Did I say they? I meant we. I meant I want to hire you to take photos of shadows on the walls. I want to name them all Sick Horse. I want to care for them, hold water in my cupped hands for them, pick windfall apples from the wet grass to lift to those enormous teeth. I hear a window open in a room below. I hope it's you breaking in with a brick.
35 parts per thousand. There's an ocean of light moving through everything all the time, and it makes me sad that I can't see it. Please, go back outside and pick another handful of wild blackberries. Carry them in the hammock of your shirt. Stand at the sliding glass doors looking up at me and smiling. Leave it so much that it hurts your teeth. There are melted glaciers in your eyes and in my eyes too. A gray bird circling as a clock chimes. And when the world rattles its tin cup against the rib of the last whale, make sure you are listening. Sometimes when it doesn't seem I'm paying attention, I actually am. I'm remembering my mother's doll with her own tiny rocking chair, pulled back, her little eyes closed, pushed forward, they opened wide again. Try not to blink, or your life will sink instead of float to shore. I wish that memory were yours, not mine.
And this next poem starts with an epigraph from Erica Meitner from her poem Ghost Box. And the epigraph reads, in one account, we heard gunshots, but didn't drive off. In another, we met a coyote and a red fox when the sun came up. There was ample parking. And the title of this poem is What Ample Feels Like. I'm pushing trees into my eyes, and now there's a forest in my head. As I walk, the acorns rattle against the river stones. Fiddlehead ferns are carcinogenic and delicious. When the brain eats brain like a bottled biosphere, I've never been so close to heaven. Though who knows if that is true? All the ghosts nod their heads like November sunflowers when you run through them. There will come a time you will think the word deer the instant before you see one stepping through the parking lot. A bell rings. Ticks rise on stalks and wave their fangs in your window. At the next support group, we will discuss the casualties by talking about them like they were here. Ding, ding, ding. Everything is still delicious. Everything is falling out of my helmet now. I must be ripe. The answer is always yes, yes, yes. The question is the light through my upper branches. Have you decided yet how best to photograph the light through my upper branches?
Down to the wire. I'm sorry, I can't hear you with all the appliances on sale. It's the sound of convenience drowning you out, the racket of a dream about to come true. We are walking somewhere and know there is at least 3 more miles to go. Let's make a game of it, I say, refusing to get up, having already started the game. Great, who's winning, you say, dropping beside me in the light from the TVs in the shop window. Whoever is rolling the dice, I say. Show me, you say. Show you what? Just then a game show flickers on and it's you and me in front of door number 2. Your face tilted up, watching the pink lights and balloons, forgetting me and where we're going, and beautiful is all anyone on this earth can think for a second. I win.
And there's a short one called Itty Bitty City. She opened her mouth and a white light came toward us from a long way off. The sound of seabirds or death, or was it only air conditioning? Perfectly shaped raindrops landing inside our headbands. Perhaps they weren't raindrops. We look up and a giant squid covers the stars.
The weight of everything. There are so many ghosts, they are pissing on each other's strangled energy. The wind in the weeds out back whistles as it moves from stalk to stalk. I'm trying to keep one small part of my mind alive before the earth gets burned and churned for something new. Do you have the time? Of course you do. It's always almost midnight. Look into the distance to see if I'm there yet. I smell charcoal, and I'm afraid it's me. A pile of smoking earth and carefully stacked mud slabs. We will build a little room with those bricks, and inside it, we will teach each other things, important things, like how to start a fire using only your fingers.
And this is called The Scraping of So Much All Our Breaths. Sometimes we move around and we stand on the street corner with bandaged hands in our pockets. When we see someone we love, we smile instead of wave. And those hands, a newborn chickadee, peppery milk caps, vintage shaving kits, and crumbling plaster, these filaments fit easily inside a rib cage. Red lights reach down at us. Soon we'll be surrounded by free and constant Wi-Fi. The air a soup of I love you, where are you, don't leave me. I'll be standing here exactly where I was. I want to breathe. like any other human, but to do that, I need it in writing how to break your heart. The cure for right now is I know I'm not the only one who feels like this. I can't be.
I fear we have made a terrible mistake. I'm sorry. Despite the beauty of the first tulip under my flashlight, all I can see is his darkness pressing in on us. You're upstairs, asleep in bed, but I know you're feeling it too. The satellite's passing over us, and I'm sending it wishes it makes it across the sky without falling in love with what it records. The words of a radio DJ floating above a lake. Let them go. Uppermost leaves of a beech tree. Allow that to sway away. You roll over, crushing a breast slightly beneath you. Rain clouds, owl sounds in your birth town, traveling over the water, through the leaves, and in your window. It's silly, really, the way we pretend to hold hands with earth and time. Yet still, my heart is filled with this lonely migration, the distant boiling of a dog bark, the soup of an even further wind chime, our necks still hot with yesterday's sun.
And this is called I Am a Speaker, You Are Vibrating. I'm so strong I can lift an eyelash from your cheek and break it in half with my own 2 arms. I can pick up ash without turning it to powder. Thus my strength is gentle and deadly. The wishes I make on both are, just be happy, duh. May you own a wide field of black and white birds. May they rise into the air when you step toward them. I am going to come up with something else you'll enjoy. A breeze against your neck, commercial-free jams. The couch you are staining with your skin. Someone's always unfurling a red carpet in front of you, and you're always trying not to step on it. It would be so much simpler if we could fly. It's so easy to imagine leaving, then landing on the horizon. The speaker is not blown, but I wouldn't turn it up too much. The tattoo across your chest spells my name if I'm behind you and you're made of glass or something else that's strong and I can see through.
DJ missing. Having exhausted all other options, you walk to the supermarket. Passing lawns along the way, ruminating upon the appendix, our lost ability to just flop into a yard and relieve any hunger. Oh, this is where I get to imagine my own history. But it is difficult to have any history when everyone's story is the same. It is also difficult to listen. Listen. Someone is paid to select the music they pump in above the frozen meats and vegetables. It's not a job many would do for free, but it keeps the ham pink and the vegetable medley puffy. Imagine what the turkey would look like without the sounds of a bossa nova. Consider the loneliness of the Mexican sodas, how they sit silent each evening when the lights wink out. You can picture them waiting. So much in this life requires rescuing now and then. The circle of warmth around a speaker increases as the volume is turned up, taking in, eventually, even you.
Here's another short one called Taking One Spoon of Earth. You cannot remember the last time you touched moss on a tree with no one around. When it rains, you sink into the ground. Outside oaks, night. You still reach for a light switch from 2 bathrooms ago. Chill of tile. Photos of animals fleeing wildfires.
Slapping against the sidewalks like meat fish. I like when the geese are swimming and seem not to notice the rest of the world running by. These are the same geese that were alive 1,000 years ago. When I get out of bed, I groan and mutter inside. I need a river again and again. I don't care how much it glows in the dark. I want to survive off the poisoned underwater leaves, just as my friends do. Water gripping the kicking little legs. What's that? A tree you notice at a bus stop 3 minutes before you die? It means so much more now, being a tree that might be the most unhappy tree within 2 feet. What we need most are durable objects, friends that look good going away, and a lifelong relationship with potable water. Those new bags at the foot of the saplings downtown hold in the moisture to keep them alive. The homeless have not yet learned how to pierce and drink from them. Soon they will. We left knives and straws.
And here's the last poem. It's called Setting the Small Fires on a Ship Stuck in Ice. One amber light blinks into the night sky. I am here. I am here. I am on unsteady ground. The room is beginning to sway. I may never be warm again. And if not, that is okay. I don't think I've ever been a snowman. And if I could write an anti-suicide PSA, it would begin, whose woods these are. You didn't see the movie? We were us, but better than us. One experienced spontaneous amputation of the small toes. One was handed an entire yellow cake. The tarantula had been brushed off moments before bringing it into the room. There were plenty of things for it to eat before it went to sleep. For example, I had a memory that I was desperately either trying to remember or forget. I had an answering machine 100 years ago. It told me who my friends were. It hung on the kitchen wall and lived on the warmth of my hand. The attention I smeared across it, standing alone at 2 a.m., waiting for the light to do something, anything. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. So real quick here, we're generally very intuitive poets. We like to be as free as possible with our collaborations, staying open to the unexpected, kind of purposely getting lost, you could say, just to see what happens next. When we look back at our completed poems, it's often impossible to remember who wrote what. I think that's a good sign, usually. We work in groups of 4 at a time, emailing the drafts back and forth as each makes additions or deletions. Titles are introduced along the way. Whatever we would do with the poems if they were our own drafts, that's kind of how we treat them. Sometimes things can get pretty drastic. If one of us notices a poem is just coming out dead in the water, he hacks it to pieces and we start fresh with the remains. It can be kind of brutal that way, but you know, our egos aren't that big, so you know, we're okay. After years of doing this, we're still friends, and you know, maybe I would add like better friends, you know, for it. But yeah, I never expected this to be anything. I don't think either of us did. I don't want to speak for you, Christopher, but you know, it's just nice that we've been doing it. Go ahead.
Absolutely, absolutely. And my little part of our statement is to mention that Jim Harrison and Ted Kuzer's book, Braided Creek, this was an inspiration when we first started working together. This is an awesome book. Sometimes we go back and forth really quickly. Flinging the drafts back and forth as a new set is done in a few weeks. Sometimes it takes months to get a new batch up to the point where we give up, i.e. call the poems done. We never ever have preconceived plans of where our collaborative poems will go. And we make a point of never discussing drafts while they're in process, preferring to let them develop entirely through the writing alone. And we found that one of the reasons that this seems to work for us is that we share an internal an internal sense of the shape of a poem. I said that wrong. We share a sense of the internal shape of a poem. That's it. When to create tension, when to leap, when to release, when to run on, when to call it a day. And yeah, and in adding to that, things, responding to things, working with Dustin has changed the poems that I wrote, the poems that went into my second book. I already loved his individual poems, but then working together, it's one of the most exciting things to open up my email and see, oh, what changes did he make? What did he do? What happened to that? And yeah, it's been a joy. And we were already friends before we started doing it. We started actually in a prose poem class at Indiana University. It was an assignment, right? A collaboration with somebody. And I collaborated with 3 different people, all friends. And I collaborated with Dustin. And with Dustin, it wasn't just that the collaboration was fun. It was that the thing that we came up with, I was like, I think this might actually be a poem, not just a fun process to go through. And then years later, we started doing it again when we lived in different towns, and we've done it by email ever since. And so thanks for being here, Dustin, and thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you guys so much. That was fantastic. Thank you. Incredible work. So I think what we want to do now is open it up to questions and answers. If people have questions for us, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that. If it would be through chat, or I guess if you could, what do you think, Jeff?
They could just, I mean, it's not, people can just, could ask the questions, just ask the questions.
Yeah, it's just that it's hard to know who's talking sometimes.
Oh, okay. Okay, if you're better with them putting in the chat.
If you think you have a question, why don't you put it in the chat and just say you have a question, and then we can ask you, or let you ask us, or whoever you want to ask. Does anyone have?
I'll say something to begin with. I'd like to say something. First of all, thank you. You were all great. I mean, it was great hearing Christopher and Dustin. That was terrific reading, and Aimee and Carol, amazing. So I wanted to say that. And I thought there was something that you 2 poets has said that was really interesting to me, because I think Meg and I are, come at it from a different angle, but you made the comment about how sometimes you're both lost. I mean, it's difficult to tell one piece from another. And I thought that was really interesting, because I think actually our work sort of fires on a different energy. Like there's a kind of pulls back and forth where the voices are sort of distinctive inside the story, but somehow, at least are the poem, but somehow I'm hoping they hold together. And I don't know, Aimee and Carol, how do you feel about that concept with your own work, with the collaboration you've been doing? Is that, do you feel like you're blended, or do you feel like there's a little?
What do you think, Aimee?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ask the question. It's like out of the clear blue.
Carol, why don't you answer that one?
Jeff, it sounds like you didn't mean to ask that as a question.
No, I did actually. I did actually mean to ask that question. I was wondering where you came in on that. That's because we heard from them, and I think, I was just wondering, how do you feel about that in terms of your own work? Do you feel like there's a kind of blending in there, or do you feel like you can still feel the distinctive parts going back and forth, providing that kind of energy? There's 2 different ways of looking at the energy in a piece.
I love that question. And my favorite kind of collaboration is what Aimee and I did, where we blended. When I read the piece about the child who gets a hold of a gun, I know that Aimee started that piece, but I can't remember which lines were hers and which were mine. There are things I can identify. Oh, I did that, or Aimee did that. But at this point, after so many revisions and so much time, it's all one thing. And that's what I really look for. But I did a collaboration with Christina Marie Darling. It's going to be reprinted. It's called X Marks the Dress. And we did that when I've collaborated with Christina. We've never blended, not one time. We worked entirely in a call and response format. Mm-hmm. And I think it was because we have such different views on the world in a wonderful way. That it wouldn't work to blend our voices. And so knowing that it didn't work, that we didn't see the subject the same way, we created different characters. Mm-hmm. And she would do a section and I would do a section, but they spoke to each other. So I'm curious, like Aimee and Meg, and also picking up on Sarah's question about music. How did you use music to shape the collaboration you've been working on?
Do you want to start, Aimee, to talk about that?
I'll say something briefly. Meg knows more about it because she was, and I think it's still working with Large-Hearted Boy, curating flash dance prose poems that were based on songs.
Mm-hmm.
And we enjoyed that so much. Separately, we were emailing like, "Oh, I just love writing from songs. We both love music." So we kind of thought, well, what if we both start writing from songs and try it together? And then it was this cool process where we came up with Spotify lists.
Yeah,
and
we made each
we're
other
sharing.
Spotify. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
But we got into a little legal concern. I mean, not really. We caught it before it could have been a problem. I'll let Meg talk about that part of it and tell the rest of the story.
oh, well, we were just a bit worried about it's kind of questionable as to whether you can sort of, you know, use songs in book projects. I mean, I think you can use like lyrics in, it's weird, in magazine publications, but if there's a book, an actual book, there's some kind of a legal issue, a copyright issue with using lyrics and using songs. You have to have permission, and that we just knew that was going to screw the whole thing up. And we had written a bunch of stories inspired by music, but then we had to sort of work with those pieces and, you know, keep the feeling of them, but get, you know, if there were bits of lyrics, we had to be quite careful with that. So we sort of had to change a little bit, change our pieces a little bit. But I don't know, for me, I would just listen to that playlist and I'd get lost in the music, and I'd get inspired by the lyrics, and I'd start writing a story inspired by each song that meant a lot to me. And sometimes I'd work with the ones that you sent me. So we sort of traded back and forth. But it's, I love listening to music when I write. It really helps me. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I love it. So.
Other questions? Well, so I'll just ask a question to everybody who worked on this. So in working on the collaborations, do you find that you have any sort of issues working on your own work at the same time? Does that ever become like an issue, or do you feel like you can make that transition back and forth between what you're doing in the collaboration and what you're doing on your own?
Does anyone want to talk about that?
If not, I'll talk about it. Okay, no, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No, so I mean, that doesn't, Aimee, does that, I mean, I want to, you know, does that issue come up for you at all? Or do you think working back and forth, it's no, you know, you're separated that way, and Carol, you both, I mean, I want to, you know, I'd be curious to hear from Dustin and Chris, because you two blend so much on your work. So how does it, you know, I'm going to shut up and let the question go into the air.
I think it, for me, when I wrote with Carol and also when I wrote with Meg, it just like happened organically with the blending, but I also had my own projects that I was also working on at the same time. I felt like for me artistically, it saved me from getting stuck. I was constantly worried about getting stuck. Like when I was writing with Carol, I had just finished a book and I, you know, didn't really know what to do next. And then when Meg asked me to write, the pandemic was just starting and I was on sabbatical, and I was like, I'm just going to get lost in this world and being home and not doing anything. And I feel like both of you kind of saved me from getting stuck artistically so that I could do my own work and create this other thing, because I wasn't too wrapped up in myself. I can get very too introspective and wrapped up in myself, and collaboration saved me from that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how about, I mean, Dustin or Christopher, is there any, because I mean, you guys, those poems, I was listening through them, I just really could kind of see there was a unified duo identity, you know, like there was sort of such a consistent singular voice in the two. I'm wondering, how does that cross over to your own work when you're doing this?
Do you want to say something, Dustin, or because I'll say something too?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So generally, when we're working on batches together, what I do is I'll do my morning writing of my own poems. And then when I kind of reach the end of that morning's writing of my own poems, I'll have printed out Dustin's most recent version that he sent to me. And I'm like in the zone at that point. I'm up at cruising altitude because I've been writing for a while, and I try and take that energy and just put it right into whatever additions and changes I'm making to the current batch. And the reason I do that is I have always been a fan of Dustin's poetry, and I want to add stuff to our collaborations that's as awesome as the stuff that he's been adding. And for me, I got to jog for a while and get going before I get my creative juices flowing. And I'll write my additions on that while it's still going, type them up later, and send them to him. And it's never a sense of competition. It's a sense of at least I know this, we inspire each other to try to give of our best to it. Thinking with the idea that I never have a preconceived idea of where the poem in each individual poem is going to go. I react to what he's added and see how the poem has changed in that way. Dustin?
Yeah, no, same thing, really. I mean, we both, it's, I don't want to say like, but it's like a puzzle to be solved sometimes when I see the next lines that you write. I'm like, okay, this is the poem. Where do you go with this? How do you make this work? You know, and it's like intuitively I can see it like 6-8 lines down where it's, not a preconceived notion of where it goes, but like where it's heading, is kind of, I think we both kind of like know where that endpoint's going to be.
So yeah, you're not worried. What about you, Meg? Do you because you're writing with me, you're writing with Aimee, and there must be at least 4 other people you have a partnership going with right at the second.
Not that. Not 4 other people.
So is there any between your own writing and the various collaborations, is there any tension or any ways you have of keeping your own writing going at the same time doing these pieces?
No, I just feel a lot looser, and I just feel like when we're working together, my wheels are turning, and my own writing comes very easily when we're collaborating. I just feel like I just feel more creative. I guess that's the best way to put it. I don't my day, because we often sort of zing emails and pieces back and forth throughout the day. It feels peppered with creativity, so I don't feel isolated from the creative part of myself. So it's really helped me with my own work, I believe.
Good for me, because I'm the novice in this group in terms of this, so I can ask you all questions, but I just want to know the answer too. It's a little selfish, but it's good. Are there other people who want to ask questions? I don't want to.
Well, Abby has a question, and it's a little bit, complicated. So Abby, I was wondering, Abby Friedman, if you wanted to go ahead and just ask it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you again for such a beautiful reading. It's so lovely to get to hear all of your work. I was just interested in the relationship between shorter work and collaboration, because, as I put in the chat, I remember reading like my first collaborative novel and being like, oh, this is like, that would be challenging. And then seeing collaborative work in shorter forms and being like, oh my gosh, there's so much less room. How do you negotiate the relationship between 2 or more writers on the page and that short space and all that is brought to that? And so I guess my question was with like short stories, prose poems, flash pieces, does that change the collaboration in any way? And what are some of the benefits of those shorter form, or what are some of the challenges that is brought to the table when you're collaborating with the writer in a shorter amount of space?
Okay, I can speak to that because I can always say something about anything. But I'll just answer. I'll talk about what me and Meg did a little bit, and Meg, you can respond to it. I think at the beginning, our pieces sort of we're sort of going in a different length. They were sort of at some place, and all of a sudden we started spotting like maybe we should end it here, and it would be like halfway through. So it really didn't create any tension that way. And then somewhere along the line, we got the idea. I think Meg spotted some like 50 syllable or 75 syllable or 100-word thing. And we did a couple of them and they came out really good. So we started doing short versions of all our long versions.
Yeah, what you're saying is there was a submission opportunity for 50-syllable stories or 75-syllable stories. So we were like, hey, you want to try reducing some of these, and that was really fun.
Yeah, really a blast. It was an editorial job actually, but then it became a writing job too.
Yeah.
So, to take them and to try to make them shorter pieces as well. So,
and then I felt like our shorter pieces were competing against our longer pieces. Like we didn't know which version we liked better.
I know, that was fun. So, well, we gave our all on that question. I think there are other groups who could answer that too, or other people who could answer that too.
I have thoughts on that, but I also wanted to acknowledge Abby. You all have to keep your eyes out for Abby's work because she's an amazing short story writer, and she's working with Aimee right now. And I admire her work very much. I think for me, it's easier to do shorter pieces in collaboration because with a long piece at some point, unless it's a highly experimental piece, you're coming up against the potential for plot or a narrative arc. And I would find it difficult to work with another writer on a narrative arc or a plot. And I don't tend to do long form that much, but when I've done long form, the hard part for me is the plot. And I don't know that I would want to collaborate with someone on that. And so with a shorter piece, I mean, like the piece I read about the child with the gun, I mean, there's a little bit of a narrative through line there, but we don't really know what's going to happen next. And Aimee and I didn't have to make that decision. Is this child going to kill someone? Are they going to be killed? What's going to happen? We didn't have to come up against that decision. So it's really about the sound. And so in that sense, I think when you're collaborating, you do want someone who can hear the sound you're going for. I think if I was working with someone and their music was really different, it would be really hard. But I find it easier. I don't know how, Aimee, how you feel about that.
Yeah, I agree. You're so right about the plot thing. The plot brings in like this whole other, like almost commercial element to it. And it gets so structured that it's no longer spontaneous. And I felt like with our collaboration, and I suspect with so many of the others that we heard today, that there's this element of spontaneity to it. Like you're just, something gets thrown at you and you have to catch it and react to it and do something with it and throw it back. And I think you lose that when you have to start thinking about plot and longer structures.
Can I say one thing though? Because Aimee, with some of our stories, I would write the beginning and you would write the ending. And some of our stories actually got up to about 2,000 words, strangely. So, and they almost had a kind of plot. I mean, they do have a kind of plot. But like, I would stop where I was like, I'm just sort of done with this. And then you would just take it into this sort of wild new sort of zone. Like our piece in 5 Points was like that. But I think that's the only way it really would have worked to develop a plot would be for one of us to write half and the other to write the other half.
Well, there was a kind of plot in that particular piece you're talking about. I mean, it wasn't like a Stephen King overarching plot. But
yeah.
Are there other questions?
One thing I can add to that, I mean, Dustin and I are primarily poets, so we can't speak to, we're not writing a novel now, we're writing poems. We don't have that difference. But I can speak to, I have collaborated with a number of people over the years informally, people I love dearly, friends and things. And what I would find often would happen is I would get this feeling that they had the idea of the entire poem in their head, and they would write something. And then when I would write something, it felt like the next thing that they wrote was a continuation of what they wrote at the beginning. And I could just feel that there was a poetic equivalent of a plot that they were coming out, and it wasn't really organically responding to mine. And I think that's the reason, and that's not a bad thing. It's that we're writers, and that's what makes you write a poem, is something carries you through it. Being comfortable with giving that up and literally responding. I try to write every day, and I'm sick of being in my head all the time when I write. And I love the opportunity to collaborate with Dustin. It takes me out of myself. And when he and I started collaborating, I noticed I didn't get that feeling that each time he added something, he was adding it to a poem he already had in mind. I could feel him responding to me. And that was just so exciting. We're just like, I want to keep doing this.
Well, I have another, actually I did do another collaboration with Roy Nathanson, who happens to be here. and we had to write it was a music and song, and I have no sense of time, or I'm like the worst person that way, but I ended up with it.
I wouldn't say that, Jeff.
We had, and I'm also the worst guitar player in the whole country, but we ended up
Definitely not true.
we put together we had to put together kind of a script and also a long song on it was on Hannah Arendt and her husband, and there was a dialogue back and forth.
Right.
And I remember I had the flu, and he got on the phone, and I was starting here, we're going to do this way, and we're going to do it at this way. And we went back and forth, and we just improv'd for like an hour, and it was all done. It was like, it was kind of so, and, of course, Roy took over with the music part of it, so, cause he kind of led the way on that whole thing. So, so that was something that turned out that actually entered into a different field in collaboration, and that was really fun working with he's famous jazz musician and also a poet himself, Roy Nathanson.
No, but Jeff, like he's really good. It's a thing, I think what you guys have been all asking, it's interesting because when you just have words, if you have music, you can kind of move into different areas, but it's when you're just using words, it seems really tough. And it was amazing how organic all three of these collaborations were. It was kind of crazy like that. Mm-hmm.
It's all that wheatgrass and stuff we've been having.
Yeah.
Not to mention cognac.
Oh yeah, cognac. That's another thing. Whenever Jeff and I sort of talk about our process, we drink cognac, which is kind of scary. I don't recommend it or anything. Yeah. I probably have missed questions in the chat. Can you see the chat, Jeff? I'm very bad at chat.
Well, I'm having trouble seeing. So let's see. I did see Wheatgrass and Cognac is a great title. Let's see. Is thank you so much? Is that a question? Yeah. Well, let's turn it to how many times do you say thank you? No. I don't see any other questions there, but am I missing something?
I had a question. If it's okay, Carol, can I ask your mom a question about you? Carol's mom is here.
Anybody else with a mother here?
I wondered about Carol as a child. Was she always creative? Was she like making up stories as a child? I know she also used to be a ballet dancer. Was she dancing and making up stories as a child? What was she like? Just curious.
What a question. Yeah, I think she was. I mean, all kids are creative. They lose it, right?
Yeah.
But they start creative. So she was definitely creative. That's all I know.
It's so special to have you here.
Thank you. Oh gosh.
Well, let me just say something. My two sisters are here too from St. Louis in California. So that's really nice.
Great.
That's so cool.
Could I say something here?
Yeah.
That what's going on here is something very ancient and going very deep. It's before the novel in all kinds of ways. It's call and response. It's the Psalms, if you like. It's all kinds of spoken literature or oral work, if you like, and that's part of the excitement about the collaboration that you're doing. And it's really a very different world from novel building, and as I think we've been saying all along.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Yeah, Lawrence, that was beautifully said. And I'd just add that one of the very first time that I ever collaborated, it was using an ancient form, the form that gave birth to haiku, tankas, sometimes called rengas, sometimes called renku. I'm probably mispronouncing those. It's where you all already know this. It's where the haiku came from. Somebody writes a line, somebody writes a haiku and a line, somebody completes that line as a couplet, at least in the West, in English language. And having that form like, you know, blues music, like these musical forms that have existed beyond any of our lives, there's something powerful in that form that we can exist in. And that was the first thing that Dustin and I haven't written those together, but I found that as a way to like, oh, can I write collaboratively with somebody working in a form that literally that was built into, made it easier to happen.
Yeah.
Well, anybody else want to, you know, are there other, you know, in the audience, I should ask this question, just, are there other people in the audience? This is just aimed at anybody, but is there anybody in the audience? Are there other collaborators or people who've worked on collaborative projects in writing? Okay, well, this was a good start for you too. Me too, as well. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like the questions are all drying up, or you know, maybe we should start to
on collaboration, Jeff. There are the collaborations when you're writing with another writer, but there's also the kind of collaboration that is words and music, visual arts and music, visual arts and literature, and so on. And they have their own delights, if you like, their own power. It's probably a different experience. It needs a kind of mutual respect in terms of the art forms, the artistic forms. But most of my experience with collaboration has been with musicians, or occasionally with visual artists, and it's got a different feeling to it, I think, but it's also exhilarating in the same way. I also done a collaborative biography, which is more like a novel in the sense that it's spun out over a long time, shall we say.
Yeah, that's really interesting, the idea of the I think, you know, actually, also Roy and Charna have done a book, like you're saying, art and art and poetry collaboration. Like the art and writer collaboration is a really, I haven't done that, but I mean, I think it's just, like as you bring up, it's a really sort of different and interesting way of trying to put something together. But you've got two different people, I mean, two different artists from different forms. So there's less chance to argue, I think. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
translation is usually some sort of collaboration, either with, like, you know, in the translations I've done with different people I've worked with, but a lot of times, even if it's just a translator and one writer, it's a collaboration of some sort.
Oh, yes, absolutely, yes. Yeah.
So I don't know, I think I've got it, you know, Meg told me I had to clean up and dust up and do the desks and fold up the chairs and clean the windows at the end. So, and also, you know, do the dishes. I'm stuck with all of that. So I think we should probably start to wrap it up here, unless there's anybody else who wants to add something. It seems like we're.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Just amazing. Thanks to our wonderful audience as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Great.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thanks for all your attention. It's so great seeing all of you here. Well, not exactly here, but you know, there.
Okay. I guess goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thanks so much.
All right,
Thanks for coming, Karen.
Stay well, everyone.
Thank you. Yes, indeed.
There was my Karen, and there was Vicky, and then Karen Schubert came.